Good evening. My friends, I want you to stop right now and ask yourself a question. A real question, not one you answer in your head and move past, but one you let settle into your bones. When was the last time you actually believed something would work out for you, not hoped, not wished, not tried to convince yourself with empty affirmations while your stomach twisted with doubt? I mean, truly believed. The way you believe the sun will rise tomorrow. The way you believe gravity will hold you to the ground. When was the last time you moved through your day with that kind of certainty about your own life? Most of you can't remember, and that's not your fault. You've been taught to live in a constant state of waiting, waiting for proof, waiting for permission, waiting for the right moment, the right circumstances, the right alignment of external forces before you allow yourself to believe that yes, this time, it might actually happen for me. You've been conditioned to treat life like a courtroom where you must present evidence before you're allowed to claim what's yours. And so you wait, you watch, you hold your breath, and life, in its infinite responsiveness, gives you exactly what you are. More waiting, more watching, more holding. But tonight, I'm going to show you something that will crack that pattern wide open. Something so simple, so obvious, that you'll wonder how you missed it for so long. I'm going to show you what happens when you stop asking life to prove itself to you and start acting as if everything, and I mean everything, always works out in your favor. Not because you're special, not because you've earned it, but because that is the law. That is how consciousness operates. And when you align with that truth, when you assume it so completely that it becomes your default state, your entire reality reorganizes itself to match. Before we go any further, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me one thing you've been waiting for permission to believe in. One thing you've been holding at arm's length, afraid to claim it fully. Write it down. Make it real. Because the moment you name it, you begin the process of assuming it. An assumption is where all creation begins. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, not because I need the numbers, but because you need the reminder. You need this voice in your feed, cutting through the noise, bringing you back to the law, again and again, until it becomes second nature. Now, let me tell you about a man I knew. He came to me after 15 years of trying, 15 years of vision boards and affirmations and manifesting rituals, 15 years of doing everything right according to the teachings he'd consumed, and 15 years of watching his desires slip through his fingers like sand. He was exhausted, not just tired, but soul tired, the kind of tired that comes from hoping too hard for too long. He said to me, "Neville, I've done everything. I've visualized, I've affirmed, I've believed, or at least I've tried to believe, but nothing changes. Nothing ever changes. And I'm starting to think maybe it's just not meant for me. Maybe I'm the exception to the law." I looked at him and I said, "You're not the exception. There are no exceptions. The law is impersonal. It doesn't care who you are or what you've done. It responds only to assumption. So tell me, what have you been assuming?" He paused. He looked confused. "I've been assuming my desires would manifest." He said, "No." I told him, "You've been assuming they haven't manifested yet. You've been assuming you're the person waiting for change. You've been assuming you need to convince the universe, convince God, convince life itself that you're worthy of what you want. And that assumption, that identity, that state of perpetual waiting, that's what the law has been faithfully reflecting back to you. You see, the law doesn't respond to your wishes. It doesn't respond to your hopes or your efforts or your worthiness. It responds only to your assumptions, to the silent, often unconscious beliefs you hold about who you are and what is true for you. And if your dominant assumption is, I am someone who has to work for it, who has to prove themselves, who has to wait for the right time, then that is the reality you will experience. Not because life is withholding from you, but because you are withholding from yourself. This man had been living his entire life from the assumption that things are hard for me, that I have to struggle, that success is something I chase but never quite catch. And the law, being impersonal and absolute, said yes, as you assume, so shall it be. And it gave him a life of chasing, a life of almost, a life of waiting. So I gave him one instruction, just one, for the next 7 days. I want you to act as if everything always works out for you, not when you feel like it, not when you see evidence. From the moment you wake up until the moment you sleep, I want you to assume that you are the kind of person for whom life unfolds easily. Assume that doors open for you. Assume that solutions appear. Assume that what you desire is already on its way. And all you have to do is move through your day with the quiet confidence of someone who knows it's handled. He looked at me like I was asking him to lie. But I'm not that person. He said, things don't work out for me. I have proof, your proof. I told him, is the result of your assumption. Change the assumption and you change the proof. But you have to go first. You have to assume it before you see it. That's the law. Consciousness is the only reality. What you assume to be true becomes true. Not eventually. Not if you're lucky. Always. Without exception. He left that day skeptical but desperate enough to try. And something extraordinary happened. Within 3 days. Not 3 months. Not 3 years. 3 days. He began to notice shifts. Small at first. A phone call he'd been waiting on came through. A problem at work that had been dragging for months suddenly resolved itself without his involvement. A financial opportunity appeared out of nowhere. Nothing he could have orchestrated. Nothing he could have forced. It simply happened. And here's what he told me when he returned. He said, Neville, it's like the world is different. But the world isn't different. I walk into rooms differently now. I respond to challenges differently. I don't panic. I don't spiral. I just assume it'll work out. And then it does. Every single time. It does. This is what I need you to understand. The world you experience is not happening to you. It is happening from you, from your assumptions, from the silent, invisible beliefs you carry about yourself and life. And the most powerful assumption you can ever hold, the one that changes everything, is this: everything always works out for me. Not because you're entitled, not because you're better than anyone else, but because when you assume it, when you live from that state, when you move through life as someone for whom things work out, the law has no choice but to confirm it. It must. It is law. Now, most people hear this, and they immediately start arguing with me in their heads. But, Neville, you don't understand my circumstances. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know how many times I've tried and failed. And you're right. I don't know your specific circumstances. But I know the law. And the law doesn't care about your circumstances. It cares about your assumptions. Change your assumption and your circumstances must change. Not might. Must. Here's where people get stuck. They wait for their circumstances to improve before they allow themselves to assume the best. They say, I'll believe everything works out for me when I see it working out. But that's backwards. That's trying to pick the fruit before you plant the seed. You have to assume it first. You have to become the person for whom things work out before life can show you that you are that person. This is the order of creation. Assumption first. Evidence second. Always. Let me show you how this works in the smallest moments of your day. Because this is where the law is most active. Not in the big dramatic manifestations, but in the tiny, constant choices you make about who you are and how life treats you. You wake up in the morning, your first thought is, here we go again. Another day of struggle, another day of pushing. That's an assumption. And from that assumption, you will experience a day of struggle and pushing. Not because the day itself is hard, but because you assumed it would be. And your assumption creates your experience. But what if, instead, your first thought was, something good is going to happen today? I don't know what, I don't know how, but I am the kind of person for whom good things happen. That's an assumption too. And from that assumption, you move through your day differently. You're open, you're receptive, you notice opportunities you would have missed. You respond to challenges with ease instead of resistance. And at the end of the day, you look back and you realize, yes, something good did happen. Multiple good things happened. Not because the day was objectively better, but because you assumed it would be, and your assumptions shaped your perception, your energy, your choices, and therefore your experience. This is the power of assumption. It doesn't just change how you feel about life. It changes what you experience in life. Because you are not separate from your reality. You are not observing life from the outside. You are generating life from the inside, from your consciousness, from your assumptions. And when you change your assumptions, you change your world. Now, here's the part that most teachings miss. They tell you to think positive. They tell you to affirm. They tell you to visualize. And all of that can be useful. But if underneath those practices, your core assumption is still, I am someone who has to work hard for what I want, or I am someone who struggles, or I am someone who bad things happen to, then no amount of positive thinking will change your reality. Because the law responds to your dominant assumption, the one running in the background, the one you don't even realize you're holding. So the work is not to think positive thoughts on top of negative assumptions. The work is to root out the negative assumption and replace it with truth. And the truth is this: you are consciousness. You are the operant power. You are the one creating your reality through what you assume to be true. And if you assume that everything always works out for you, it must. That is law. Let me give you the practice. The actual technique you can use starting tonight. It's simple, deceptively simple. But if you do it consistently, it will rewire your entire relationship with life. Every time something happens, anything, big or small, good or bad, neutral, I want you to say to yourself, this is working out for me. Not I hope this works out. Not maybe this will work out. This is working out for me. State it as fact. Assume it as truth. Your car breaks down. This is working out for me. You don't know how yet. You don't need to know how. You just assume it. Maybe it's saving you from an accident. Maybe it's redirecting you to a better opportunity. Maybe it's teaching you something you need to learn. It doesn't matter. You assume it's working out. You get rejected from a job. This is working out for me. Maybe that job would have been miserable. Maybe something better is coming. Maybe this is pushing you toward the thing you're actually meant to do. You don't analyze. You don't justify. You simply assume. Someone cancels plans. This is working out for me. A bill arrives. This is working out for me. You wake up tired. This is working out for me. You assume. You assume. You assume. And slowly, subtly, powerfully, your entire relationship with life begins to shift. Because here's what happens. When you assume everything is working out for you, you stop resisting life. You stop fighting reality. You stop collapsing into fear and doubt every time something unexpected happens. Instead, you relax. You trust. You stay open. And from that state of openness and trust, you perceive opportunities you would have missed in a state of fear. You make decisions from clarity instead of panic. You allow solutions to come to you instead of desperately chasing them. And life, responding to your assumption, begins to work out for you. Not because you forced it, because you assumed it. An assumption is the beginning and the end of all creation. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds like spiritual bypassing. This sounds like toxic positivity. This sounds like pretending everything is fine when it's not. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm not asking you to deny your emotions. I'm not asking you to suppress your pain. I'm not asking you to paste a smile on your face and pretend you're happy when you're not. I'm asking you to change your fundamental assumption about the nature of reality. To stop assuming that life is happening to you and start assuming that life is happening for you. To stop assuming that you are a victim of circumstance and start assuming that you are the creator of circumstance. To stop assuming that you have to fight and prove and earn and start assuming that you are the kind of person for whom things work out naturally, easily, consistently. This is not denial. This is alignment with truth. The truth of who you are. The truth of how consciousness operates. The truth of the law. Let me tell you what happened to that man after his 7 days. He came back to me and he said, "Neville, I understand now. I have been living my whole life as if I was cursed, as if I had to overcome some invisible force working against me. And that assumption became a self-fulfilling prophecy. But now I see it differently. I see that I am not fighting against life. I am life. I am consciousness. And what I assume, I experience. So I'm choosing a different assumption. I'm choosing to assume that I am favored, that I am supported, that everything, and I mean everything, always works out for me. And the moment I made that choice, the moment I committed to that assumption, my entire world began to reorganize itself. He's not special. He didn't have an advantage you don't have. He simply changed his assumption. And the law, being absolute and impersonal, had no choice but to conform to his new assumption. You can do the same. Right now, not when your circumstances improve, not when you feel more confident, not when you have proof. Now, this moment, you can choose to assume that you are the kind of person for whom everything always works out. And if you hold that assumption, if you live from that assumption, if you refuse to abandon that assumption no matter what appears in your outer world, your reality must change. It has to. That is the law. Here's the practice I want you to commit to for the next 7 days. Not 7 weeks, not 7 months, 7 days, 1 week. You can do anything for 1 week. Every morning when you wake up, before you check your phone, before you start planning your day, before you do anything, I want you to say to yourself out loud, if possible, everything always works out for me. Say it like you mean it. Say it like it's true. Because it is true. You're not lying. You're assuming. And assumption creates fact. Then, throughout your day, every time you face a decision, every time you encounter a challenge, every time something unexpected happens, return to that assumption. This is working out for me. I am the kind of person for whom things work out. I don't need to know how. I don't need to see the full picture. I just assume it. I trust it. I live from it. And here's the most important part. When doubt arises, and it will, when the old assumption tries to creep back in, and it will, when your mind starts offering you evidence of all the times things didn't work out, and it will, you don't fight it. You don't argue with it. You simply notice it. You see it for what it is, an old assumption trying to reassert itself. And then you gently, persistently, lovingly return to the new assumption. Everything always works out for me. That's who I am now. That's the truth I'm living from. You do this for 7 days. Not perfectly. You'll slip. You'll forget. You'll fall back into the old pattern. That's fine. The power is not in never slipping. The power is in how quickly you return. Every time you catch yourself in the old assumption and choose the new one, you strengthen the new pattern. You reinforce the new identity. You collapse the wave of possibility a little more in the direction of the reality you're assuming. And by day 7, you will not be the same person you are today. You won't think the same. You won't feel the same. You won't move through life the same. Because you will have assumed a new identity. The identity of someone for whom everything always works out. And that assumption, held consistently, will become your new default, your new operating system, your new reality. Now, let me be very clear about something. This is not about pretending. This is not about putting on a mask and acting like everything is fine when you're falling apart inside. This is about recognizing the truth of how creation works and aligning yourself with that truth. You are not pretending that everything works out for you. You are assuming it. And there is a massive difference. Pretending is surface level. It's performance. It's exhausting. You pretend from a place of fear, hoping that if you act a certain way, reality will change. But assumption is deeper. Assumption is identity. When you assume something, you're not hoping it's true. You're operating from the certainty that it is true. You're not trying to convince the outer world. You're establishing a fact in consciousness. And what is established in consciousness must manifest in form. Here's what this looks like in practice. You're facing a financial challenge. The old assumption says, I'm going to lose everything. I never have enough. Money is hard for me. That assumption creates fear. The fear creates contraction. The contraction blocks the flow. And you experience more lack, not because lack is real, but because you assumed it, and the law confirmed your assumption. But the new assumption says, this is working out for me. I am the kind of person for whom financial solutions appear. I don't know how this will resolve, but I know it will. That assumption creates calm. The calm creates openness. The openness allows solutions to flow to you. And within days, sometimes hours, something shifts. A payment comes through. An opportunity appears. A solution you couldn't have predicted presents itself. Not because you manifested it through effort, but because you assumed it. And the law, faithful and impersonal, delivered what you assumed to be true. This is how it works. Every single time, without exception, you assume, the law confirms, you experience. That is the entire process. And when you realize this, when you truly grasp that your assumptions are creating your reality, you stop being a victim. You stop waiting for life to change. You stop hoping and wishing and begging. You become the operant power. You start assuming the reality you want. And you watch it materialize before your eyes. I want you to understand something crucial. The reason most people never experience this level of creative power is not because they don't know the law. It's because they won't commit to the assumption long enough for it to harden into fact. They assume for a day. They see no immediate evidence. And they abandon the assumption. They go right back to the old pattern. And then they wonder why nothing changes. But assumption is not a one-time event. It's a state you must maintain. You have to live in the assumption. Dwell in it. Refuse to abandon it no matter what your senses report. Because your senses are showing you the old assumption, the old reality, the old you. If you react to what you see, if you let the outer world dictate your inner assumption, you will stay locked in the old pattern forever. But if you hold your assumption, if you remain faithful to it, if you continue to assume that everything always works out for you even when the evidence says otherwise, you are impressing that assumption into consciousness. You are planting a seed, And that seed must sprout. It must grow. It must bear fruit. That is law. It cannot fail. So when you face evidence that contradicts your assumption, and you don't panic. You don't collapse. You don't abandon the assumption. You say to yourself, this is the old reality reflecting the old assumption. But I am no longer that person. I am the person for whom everything works out. And I am staying in that assumption regardless of what I see. And you hold, you persist, you remain faithful. And the outer world, which has no choice, no will, no power of its own, must reorganize itself to match your inner assumption. This is the secret. This is what every master has taught. This is what every mystic has known. Consciousness is the only reality. What you assume in consciousness becomes your experience in the world. Change your assumption and you change your world. It's that simple. It's that absolute. It's that powerful. Let me give you one more example. A woman came to me years ago. She was brilliant, talented, capable. But she had been passed over for promotion after promotion. Watched as people with less experience, less skill, less dedication moved ahead of her. And she was bitter. She was angry. She felt victimized by a system that didn't recognize her worth. I asked her, what do you assume about yourself in relation to success? She said, I assume I'm qualified. I assume I'm talented. I assume I deserve it. But it doesn't matter what I assume because the world doesn't care. That, I told her, is your actual assumption. Not that you deserve success, but that the world doesn't care, that you can be worthy and still be overlooked. That external forces determine your fate. And as long as that is your assumption, that will be your experience. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, so what do I do? I said, assume that you are the kind of person who gets recognized, who gets promoted, who moves through life with ease and favor. Don't assume you deserve it. Don't assume you're trying to get it. Assume you already are it. Assume it's natural. Assume it's inevitable. Assume that everything, including this situation, is working out for you. She committed to it. For 30 days, she lived from that assumption. She stopped complaining. She stopped resenting. She stopped looking at her career as something she had to fight for. She simply assumed she was the kind of person who succeeded. She walked into meetings differently. She spoke differently. She carried herself differently. Not because she was pretending, but because she had changed her assumption about who she was. And within those 30 days, she was offered a position she hadn't even applied for. A position that was created specifically for her. A position that utilized her skills and paid her more than the promotion she had been chasing for years. It didn't come from effort. It came from assumption. She assumed she was the kind of person for whom opportunities appear. And the law, faithful and absolute, confirmed her assumption. This is available to you right now. Not after you prove yourself. Not after you fix yourself. Not after you earn it. Now, you simply choose the assumption, you commit to it, and you live from it. That's the entire process. So here are the lessons I want you to take from this. Write these down. Let them sink into your consciousness until they become part of how you see reality. Lesson 1. You are not waiting for life to change. Life is waiting for you to assume a new identity. The moment you change your assumption, your world begins to reorganize. Lesson 2. The law does not respond to your worthiness, your effort, or your circumstances. It responds only to your assumptions. What you assume to be true becomes true. Lesson 3. Everything is working out for you, not when you see evidence, not when you feel deserving. Right now, because you say so, because you assume so, An assumption is the beginning of creation. Lesson 4. You don't have to know how. You don't have to see the path. You don't have to orchestrate the details. You simply assume the end. Assume everything works out. And the law handles the how. Lesson 5. Doubt will come. Old assumptions will try to reassert themselves. Evidence will seem to contradict you. This is normal. This is part of the process. The power is in your persistence. Return to the assumption again and again until it becomes natural. Lesson 6. You are not pretending. You are not lying. You are assuming. And assumption creates fact. When you assume something completely, when you dwell in it, when you refuse to abandon it, it must materialize. That is law. Lesson 7. Start now, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. No, this moment. Choose the assumption. Say it. Feel it. Live from it. Everything always works out for me. Make that your truth. And watch your world transform. My friends, you have spent so much of your life trying to earn what is already yours, trying to prove what needs no proof, trying to become worthy of what you already are. But worthiness is not the issue. Assumption is, you don't need to be more. You don't need to do more. You simply need to assume more. Assume that you are the kind of person for whom life works out. And then live from that assumption with such persistence, such faith, such absolute certainty that the outer world has no choice but to conform. This is not hope. This is not wishful thinking. This is law, immutable, impersonal, absolute. Test it. Prove it to yourself. Commit to the assumption for 7 days. Live as if everything always works out for you. And watch what happens. Not in your imagination. In your actual lived experience. You are not small. You are not powerless. You are not at the mercy of circumstances. You are consciousness itself. The operant power, the creator of your world. And the moment you assume that truth, the moment you live from that truth, everything changes. Everything always works out for you. Not because the universe favors you, but because you favor yourself. Because you assume it. Because you claim it. Because you become it. Go now and live as the person you've been waiting to become. That person is not in the future. They are here, now, in this moment, waiting for you to assume them into being. Thank you. My friends, until we meet again in consciousness,